shadows in the dark, they will lead the way to the hidden pathways of the heart. And that secret place, that is where I find my start.
Welcome to the Shadow and the Light podcast with internationally renowned meditation teacher, Davidji.
And heart healer and psychotherapist, Elizabeth Winkler, as we guide you through our unique fusion of ancient wisdom and modern psychology.
Get ready to awaken your true essence, heal your wounds, and transform your shadow into
It's here to remove all our fears and to bring new light. The light. It's time that we'll go to the deep to take us to new heights. The shadow and the light.
Hi, Davidji.
Oh, hello there, Elizabeth. You and I have spent so much time together and apart, diving into our favorite spiritual teachings. We know that you're a close connected friend of Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul. I befriended Don Miguel Ruiz about 20 years ago. And there's so many great teachers out there that we have spent time with and had intimate conversations with. And I think now might be a great time to really talk about one of those teachings. It is Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements. And it's one of those journeys where we think, oh, that's digestible, that's accessible. It's only 4 individual teachings. There's actually a secret embedded 5th teaching in there. Yeah, the fact that it is so accessible and the fact that it is only theoretically 4 agreements and the secret embedded teaching really will allow us to hold on to this process and maybe take our lives to the next level. So the 4 agreements as they have been articulated by Don Miguel Ruiz are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Now, this book was originally written in 1996. That's when it was released. There's a lot of fascinating stuff going on during that mid to late 90s period. Deepak Chopra wrote the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Eckhart Tolle wrote The Power of Now. And Don Miguel Ruiz wrote The 4 Agreements. And that's one of the exciting things. There was like some kind of like fertile, energetic explosion that went on during that period of time, certainly from these 3 luminaries, all talking about different ways of accessing the same thing, which is wholeness. And all of it, whether it's the 7 Spiritual Laws, which is directly taken from Adi Shankara's The Crest Jewel of Discrimination, written around the 700s, so 1400 years ago, which is taken directly from the Upanishads, which perhaps is another 1,000 years earlier. So we can draw direct threads between the contents of the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success and even going back to 600 BC, the teachings of the Buddha, 2,600 years ago. And as we look at the 4 agreements, we see that there are even certain concepts that were taken from the teachings of the Buddha. So just fascinating to think that Deepak Chopra, who achieved this global fame, and Don Miguel Ruiz, who achieved this global fame, achieved it really channeling the ancient teachings of the Buddha and of Buddhism. And we can go directly to, when we think of be impeccable with your word. Oh, well, if you look at the Noble Eightfold Path of the Buddha, which is what he taught, it's right view, right intention, right speech. And when these teachings are referred to as right, it's not right and wrong, it's aligned. And so suddenly it's like, oh, Don Miguel, your very, very first agreement, be impeccable with your word, is actually the 3rd step on Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. And when you say always do your best, we could apply that to, again, another teaching in the Noble Eightfold Path, right effort. Show up and bring it. So fascinating. So I thought, Elizabeth, you and I could really talk about these 4 teachings and, of course, the secret embedded teaching, which Don Miguel shares in the first chapter, which is domestication. But it's based on the premise that you and I, in our very, very early years, made some contracts with the world, made some contracts with ourselves. And there were moments of clarity that we had where we said, in order for me to get what I need, I'm going to need to make this compromise. I compare myself to other people in my life. They're much more attractive than me, so I'm going to not get my needs met through being attractive. Maybe I'll be funny, or maybe I'll be sweet, or maybe I'll be more compliant. And we made these shift, these teeny little, thousands of them, little compromises and shifts in our early years so that we would be liked or taken care of or appreciated or receive the love that we thought we were going to get if I act this way or show up this way. We got included into this club or this group of people by acting a certain way or expressing this certain persona, and we locked it in. That was our very, very first agreement. And so the teachings of Don Miguel say, okay, here we are. There's 4 agreements that we can make right now to take our lives to the next level. And that's to be impeccable with our word, to not take anything personally, to not make assumptions, and always do your best. And I think these are achievable, and I think we can put them in rotation into our life, whether that's living one each day. But whenever I say to someone, you're familiar with the 4 agreements, right? And they'll always be able to say 3, but they don't know the 4th. And that's why we understand even 4, which we think is so bite-sized, even hard to remember that. So we're all going to have our fave, and then we're going to have, how do we weave these into our lives? So Elizabeth, when did you first come into contact with the 4 agreements?
I'm glad you asked. I was in my very first class in graduate school, and it was required reading, which is kind of amazing, right? And I fell in love with it. And this is what began my finding a teacher and going to the teacher, learning from the teacher. Like, that's how I am. So when I heard you on 40 Days, I'm like, okay, I got to take his meditation teacher training. Michael Singer, I studied him for a long time, and then I went to his temple several times. With Don Miguel, I read this and I was like, I have to know more. I have to know more. I read everything I knew of him. And then I went to one of his book signings, and I ended up communicating with him and asking him, I want to be an apprentice. How can I apprentice? And so he had teachers that you could do that with. So I did a little apprenticeship with one of his people. And there's one thing that's really stood out from that apprenticeship, which was I had this exercise I had to do. My teacher, he said, write down all your judgments. And so I wrote down my judgments. He's like, that's one column. And then next to that column, right, it's judgment on the top of the first column, and the second one is victim. So every judgment, look at how that makes you a victim. And that's the big thing that stood out from that particular apprenticeship. But I love this. I love the 4 agreements. I love The Mastery of Love, the book he wrote after that, which is, I think, I used to give that to couples to read. I think I love using books in my therapy process, and often when I'm working with couples, I'll tell them to read the 4 agreements and then apply that in your relationship. You know, there's a newer one called the 5th agreement, right? Have you read that one? It's his son. I think it's on attachment.
It's actually written by Don Jose.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, it's Don Miguel tacking on the 5th agreement. There was a certain period of time where Don Miguel began the journey of passing the torch to his sons, Don Jose, who's an amazing preacher, and Don Miguel Jr. And they both have launched very, very successful careers, and they're both as charismatic as their dad. But I always felt that the 4 agreements is really the seminal teaching, and then Don Jose was inspired to take it to the next level. That 5th agreement is essentially trust but verify in our translation of what that is. Believe but be skeptical. But since that is Don Jose, not Don Miguel, and it's just an interesting evolution of where they came to, it's hard enough to remember the four. So I'm hesitant to add the fifth. But yeah, that's a powerful book as well.
Yeah. So anyway, I love it, but I just wanted to share that tool because I think it's really powerful for people to reflect and write down your judgments and then see that when you're judging, you're becoming a victim of yourself. So if you're judging others or you're judging yourself. So that's a really powerful awareness tool that is the first thing I always think of when I think of Don Miguel and the Four Agreements. I love this. I love the agreement, don't take anything personally. We personalize everything. That's the voice in our head. We've talked a lot about this on our podcast about the voice in your head, personalizing every single thing. Everything is about me. The truth of the matter is everybody's thinking about themselves. So we think that everyone in the room is thinking about what I'm doing and looking at me, but actually they're thinking the same thing about themselves. Right. So don't take anything.
People are laying in bed at night thinking about us. And they're laying in bed at night thinking about themselves.
So this is the egoic trap in what you're talking about, domestication. It's the domestication, if I'm understanding the way you're talking about it, is, the pain that where we felt excluded and included, and that created these egoic tendencies within us and the roles that we took on. And these tools of the agreements help us to untether from what is true or not, and allow us to really get to know ourselves and each other. The one on assumptions, when you're assuming, you're projecting. It's like I walk in to here to the podcast room. I haven't seen davidji, I haven't seen Mateo in a while. I mean, I've talked to him, but I haven't seen them. If I hold on to my previous experience, then I'm just filling in the blanks. And when we fill in the blanks of each other, we're not allowing ourselves to be the freshness and newness of the present moment. We're all rivers and we're always changing and not making assumptions about each other, rather asking more questions about who you are in this present moment allows us to be more forgiving and open and available.
You talk about this a lot when you talk about ego and you talk about who we are, how do we show up. But, what is an assumption? So we categorize life into these three categories: the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. We do this subconsciously as we walk through the world. We're always putting things into those three categories, and we take things that are unknown or unknowable and we sort of like massage them until we think we know. The brain, where the mind is always seeking certainty. We're always seeking, we think it's going to make us feel safer. I don't know what's around the corner, but if I guess what's around the corner and then ultimately I believe what I've guessed is fact, then I'm calmer. Oh, there's nothing scary around the corner. And then it doesn't matter. If I go there and there's something scary, that'll be in that moment. But once we try to force the unknown and the unknowable into the realm of the known, it only really becomes true for us. And Don Miguel talks about this a lot in the Four Agreements because he talks about this is this dream that we live in, which we've crafted all our agreements and we're living in this particular dream, which is our belief system, which is our personal point of view, which has nothing to do with yours or our collective one. So when we assume how everyone thinks, and I may say, oh, I know what you're thinking, Elizabeth. I know how you're thinking, but it's just a guess. But in that moment, I turn my guess into a fact. And I've just crafted a whole dream. How could I ever, even though we spend so much time talking to each other and being with each other, it's still your dream and my dream are separate dreams. We share a collective dream. When you and I were in Ireland together, we spent a lot of time together, sometimes talking, sometimes not, sometimes partying, sometimes not, sometimes meditating, sometimes not, whatever it was. But still, you were in your dream, I was in my dream, and then we had our collective dream. And the second we separated, the collective dream held on for a little bit there, and then that's embedded in our memories. But still, virtually impossible for me to climb into your head and guess what you were thinking, because You're comparing that to everything that's ever happened in your life. So when we make assumptions, I know what's in your head, or I know what's going to happen, or I know what this thing is, really all we're doing is it's not actually true, but we're convincing ourselves that it is true.
Well, I actually had to talk to a client on my drive down here today, and this is exactly what came out. So my client and I had a call, and my client was struggling with an ex relationship, co-parenting, was assuming a lot of things from the past. I could tell by the way that she was speaking. It's like, well, of course he's doing this, and of course that and this. And so wanting it to be different, I'm like, well, it sounds like you want it to be different, but that you know that it's a particular way. We kind of dove more deeply into this. I said, well, what if you don't know? And she said, well, actually, the truth is I don't know who he is. And I said, okay, what if we can be with that? What if you can be okay with not knowing and discovering? Why do you think that you hold on to these beliefs? She was very honest and said, because it validates my story, which is like pretty courageous to admit to yourself that I'm validating my story about this thing that makes me feel safe about myself and the world, which really doesn't. It's not really working. It's not really making you feel safe. It's making you feel unsafe because there's no connection. But it makes your ego feel valid. I'm right. He's wrong, right? So this is a really, really, really important one. And actually, I think in the book, he says, with just this one agreement alone, you will transform your entire life, because it's all about projection. And I don't remember what episode we were talking about this, but we were talking, I think it was Ego Jedi. We were talking about filling in the blanks, how we are always filling in the blanks in our relationships, especially with the people we hang out with a lot. And so, or if you are divorced or something like that, you're going to fill in the blanks of your ex a lot. Unless you can be more mindful and be open to the fact that I don't really know who they are anymore. I don't live with them anymore. Or even the people that you do live with, there's a lot going on, to your point, in their dream that you're not a part of. So being more open to asking questions, not making assumptions. All of your assumptions are about you. Projections are about you. How could you know what someone's thinking? That has to do with your own stuff. So whatever you're assuming is about you. There's a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, when I assume, I'm making an ass out of you and me. And that's just true. You're staying stuck. If you want to stay stuck, make assumptions. You're just projecting, which is going to create more patterns of the past in the present moment. I think most of us don't want that. We want fresh and new experience. Well, the thing is, the reason we don't do that, you said certainty. There is no certainty. We need to make peace with the fact that there isn't. When we lie to ourselves and we think that we can create that, then we're like, okay, this is going to happen and he's going to do this and blah, 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 blah. But we really know at the depth of our being that we don't know. And that's why we feel insecure. And because we actually know that it is uncertain. The sooner that we can make peace with that and know that and use our voice to be impeccable with our word and do our best and not take anything personally and not make assumptions, it makes us better communicators. It makes us present. It makes us open. And so these are really powerful tools to transform your relationships.
Yeah, going back to the fifth agreement, one of the things that's hammered home in that fifth agreement is to listen. Again, which is not the original seminal work of Don Miguel. One of the things Don Miguel talks about in being impeccable with your words, when we talk about impeccability with our words, it's to embrace the full understanding of the flow of communication. So be impeccable with what goes out and be impeccable with what comes in. Be a better listener. Can I be the silent witness as someone's talking to me? And in that process, if I'm impeccable with what goes out and I'm willing to receive and listen to what comes in, then I won't take it personally. If I can stay in that space, if I can allow that space. If we go back to the teachings of the Buddha, the Noble Eightfold Path, it's not just right speech, it's right speech followed by right action, followed by right livelihood, followed by right effort. And of course, followed by right mindfulness, and then right samadhi, right concentration. These are like the founding elements. The very, very first step of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. And I would say we can take these four agreements of being impeccable with our word, not taking anything personally, not making assumptions, and always doing our best. And they all get put into that. Are you living with that view? Are you living with a viewpoint that you'd like to be a little more impeccable with your word? You'd like to take fewer things personally. You'd like to make fewer assumptions or feel the need to guess less frequently. And you'd like to always do your best. Why would we always want to do our best? Because everybody listening has regrets about how we showed up for things in the past. I remember when a dear loved one in my life died, my first thought was, I could have been kinder. Does that eat at me? No, it did for a bit, but then I integrated it into my life, and that moment acted as an inspiration for how I want to treat other people. But it's a foundational element. And so if we always do our best and know that we are all doing our best from our level of consciousness at the time, which may be low, maybe we're tired, maybe we're sick, maybe we're exhausted, maybe we just had a fight, maybe we're angry, maybe we're sad. So our best is not going to be the same as if we had a full night's sleep and we were feeling great and we were totally nourished. But we can say, well, if I show up and don't phone it in and show up and do my best, then I'll regret less. By being fully present right now, we can put off a whole bunch of unnecessary pain and suffering in the future.
You know, when you were talking about being impeccable with your word, it makes me think of, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?
Right.
As another way to look at that agreement.
Right.
Those three, is it the three gates?
The three
right?
gates, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which I think is from Native American, isn't it?
Everyone claims that one.
Okay, I don't
Some
know.
people claim it's a Quaker tale. Some people claim it's Native. And we know that it has been discussed by Socrates. So we're going back, again, several thousand years. It's hard. Everyone wants in on that one. Although Socrates' original, is it true, is it kind, is it necessary? Socrates didn't have, is it necessary? Socrates had as the third component, does it add value to the moment? So we could always look at that third component. And my translation is, does it improve upon the silence? So pick your third of the three gates. But I think even if it wasn't invented by this culture or that culture, it's one of those universal teachings that I think every culture holds dear.
Yeah. I love it. Does it add upon, what's the way you say it?
Does it improve upon the silence?
Yeah, I love that because, as you always say, people are always piling on. And we've talked about gossip in one of our episodes and how toxic that is. He talks about that in this chapter on being impeccable and how much piling on there is. And it's toxic to yourself and obviously to each other. If you just change that, you would feel a lot better about yourself. Maybe looking at how impeccable you are with your word towards yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people might feel overwhelmed, like, 4 teachings? That's a lot for me to be integrating every single moment of every single day. But it's not. And don't do all 4. Pick the one that speaks to you on a daily basis and say, today I'm going to try to be a little more impeccable with my word. What's that mean? Instead of cursing, or instead of saying something that might be unnecessarily harsh out loud, maybe you come up with another word for it. Like, oh, snap. Being impeccable with your word really means be more creative. You don't have to use certain tropes that you've used forever. Why not be more creative and figure out a better way to express, a way that honors the recipient of your words in every single moment? Not taking anything personally. This is why I have stressed the second meditation of the day, the bookends of your day, meditating at some point between noon and dinner time, because we all absorb. We all take stuff personally. We even take stuff personally by people we don't even know, right? Whatever it is, you're taking stuff personally. If someone says, I never wear tan, it's such a loser color. I'm looking over at Mateo, who's wearing a tan vest right now.
Oh, what about red? What about red? You never wear red.
I have an aversion to red. I even got triggered. I even got triggered by this red straw.
Okay, so how can you not take that personally? Let's work with it. Let's work with it right now.
Elizabeth loves talking about the ego. I love talking about the I, me, mine of our life. Stuff we think we own. Mateo thinks he owns that tan vest. I'm wearing a davidji.com t-shirt. I think I own it. I actually do pay a monthly fee to GoDaddy for davidji.com. Elizabeth, I love your frames. I haven't seen you wear those frames before, so I'm thinking it's a new acquisition. Really a fan of those clear frames. But you think you own them. And we can get attached to the, what do we think we own? We think we own our hairstyle. We think we own our skin color. We think we own our belief systems. We think we own our house. Probably the bank owns it. We think we own our car. Probably the bank owns it. We think we own the music that we vibe to. We think we own the lane we're driving in. We can go on and on and on. Anytime someone challenges anything we think we own, guess what happens in that moment? We take it personally. It may not floor us or knock us over, but when I said that to Mateo and he looked down at his tan vest, he was like, awkward or discomfort or something like that, or unnecessary. So suddenly
Are you making an assumption right now?
Yes, I am. I'm totally assuming that.
Why don't you ask a question?
Okay, Mateo, how did you feel? I'm going to slide my mic over to Mateo.
I didn't take it too personal, but I thought it was funny. So, yeah.
Right. So think about it. He knows that this is under a kind environment, and he knows that I love him. So it's not a big deal. But if he was out on the street, or if he was in a large crowd and felt a little less safe in that environment and someone said, let's go after everyone with a tan vest, he would then have a lot more invested in escaping and getting out of there. So think about this. Anytime someone challenges something you think you own, and that could be so many different things, we are taking it personally at a little bit. And if that happens on a consistent basis, then we are really absorbing a lot of energy, which is why I'll stress again, if we can just do a 5-minute let go meditation somewhere between noon and dinner time every single day, just 5 minutes, let go. Breathe in with your eyes closed, silently repeat, let. And as you breathe out, silently repeat, go. And whatever comes into your awareness for these 5 minutes, it could be great stuff. It could be negative stuff. It could be toxic stuff. It could be annoying stuff. It can be beautiful stuff. Whatever it is, let go. Let go. This can be one of the most powerful shifts in your consciousness, because when else are you letting go of stuff you've taken personally? Think about that. We absorb stuff all the time, but we don't have a release valve and we don't have a release practice. We don't have a letting go practice. So I think one of the great tools for don't take anything personally is doing a 5-minute every afternoon in some way, let go practice. We've talked about be impeccable with your word, which is also be impeccable with your listening. And this feeds emotional intelligence. And this is a whole process on the dynamic exchange that Elizabeth and I talk about so frequently. Don't take anything personally. We have a release valve built into our daily schedule. That will make that easier. Elizabeth dove deep into the concept of don't make assumptions. And then we come back to always do your best. And again, if you believe that the highest vibration always wins, then just keep raising your vibration and don't worry about other people. We're always going to have judgment that someone is not pulling their weight as much as I am pulling my weight in this particular moment. Worry about your weight. Don't worry about them pulling their weight. Worry about how are you showing up in this world. Are you showing up with bells on? Are you showing up to bring it? Are you showing up to truly add value to the moment? To improve upon the silence? And these are the ways that we can really shift our life just by picking one of Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements.
I think this really helps a lot with perfectionism, which I definitely have been a perfectionist throughout my life, and it was, push myself. I want to talk a little bit about the fourth agreement, always doing your best, because to a perfectionist, they're like, I'm not doing my best. It makes you want to like, okay, am I doing my best? Am I doing my best? I've heard that a lot from my clients, and I relate. So, sometimes for those of you that are recovering perfectionists, but people that push themselves really hard, do you tend to push yourself too hard? That is not what it's telling you to do. It's not telling you to go harder. As he said, you might not have gotten enough sleep. You might be going through a difficult time. That's the version of yourself that you are in this moment. And that's more than enough. Wherever you are, you do what you can with where you are. And that is your best. It's not a comparative experience. So often I hear people in sessions saying, I just want to get back to like how I was, a year ago. I want to go back to that. You can't go back to that. You need to be where you are, accept and allow yourself to be where you are so that you can grow from whatever mud you are sitting in at this moment. So the mud is a fertile space. If you're feeling stuck, that's okay. Except what I find is when people are feeling stuck, they want to be out of the mud. I don't want to be here. I want to be there. The only way to get out is to be where you are. So accept where you are. It's more than enough. And then begin with these other agreements, like being impeccable with your word. Your word is so powerful. How are you using it for yourself? How are you using it with others? And then I feel the personalization and the assumptions are very interconnected because it's all about projection.
Yes, everything is about projection. Everything.
Yeah.
Now it's time for today's takeaway, often referred to as living the light. I have to tell you, when we first came up with, and really it was Elizabeth's idea, when we first came up with living the light, we had Jamar Rogers in the studio at the time, and they tried to like create this thing where Elizabeth would say, living the, and Jamar would go, light. And just as Elizabeth laughed so hysterically when I just did that, every time I tried to even put it together, it always had a laugh at the end of it. So I tried to create this thing. So we were like, sorry, Jamar, you begin and end every episode, but the living the light is really just me going, living the light. So Elizabeth, what's today's takeaway?
Well, I'm thinking that today's takeaway is being okay with not knowing. When we're talking about projection, we're trying to fill in the blanks, assuming, personalizing, all this stuff. And so my quote, I'm pretty sure I have no idea. Being okay with living in the question mark, when you can allow yourself to be in that open, available, uncertain space, you are in a beginner's mind. So let's all embrace being in a beginner's mind, just like a child, or when you go out and you look at the sunset or the moon and you're just captured and you're just in awe. We can live from that space. These 4 agreements really help you connect to that. And so let's all bring that into our lives. The next person you meet after you listen to this podcast, be open, be available, ask a question, don't assume, and see what you discover about them and yourself in that process.
Wow. So brilliant. So magnificent. So great. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is davidji. I'm here with the alchemical transmuter of energy from shadow into light, Elizabeth Winkler. We are the Shadow and the Light podcast, and this has been sort of our little exploration into the 4 agreements. And we recommend pick one, live it, and see how your life unfolds. Keep sharing this podcast with your friends, with your loved ones, with your family. Hopefully you're finding value in our journey. Please stay connected with us. Always let us know if there's a topic or a theme that really speaks to you that you'd like us to dive deep into. And we'll see you on the next episode. Jamar, take us into our journey.
Of the shadows in the dark, they will lead the way to the hidden pathways of the heart. In that secret place, that is where I find my start. shine bright.